Woo! We're back, Dr. James and Dr. Mike. How's it going?
It's going well, man. I'm excited to get into this week's meat and potatoes, though I recently turned both vegan and carnivore, so I can't eat meat or potatoes.
Vegan and carnivore. Conflict of interest. Okay, so I was looking through the webinar we did last time, and I don't know why, but this just caught my eye. Check this out. So I'm going to screen share here. Look at the look at the tag that Milo did. So we start off intro, forearm, and VR talk. We all
Daniel
remember
Brown.
what that actually was. 6 minutes and 25 seconds later, we get into it. So we literally talked about like VR wanking for like 6.5 minutes before we even answered any questions.
Beautiful. And that's 6.5 minutes. Those are high quality minutes, and I'm proud of every single one of those minutes.
Exactly.
All right. Folks, today we have a slightly different format beginning. Don't worry, it's still Q&A, but we now have a little paid
This time we ask you questions.
That's right. That's right. We have a paid member thing with YouTube. It's like $5, and you get a little stamp next to your name, and you get to do exclusive
See, there's the
perks.
stamp right
You
there.
get a couple new videos. Jared and I are on here as well. So James and I are on here once a month, and we're going to be answering 10 member questions and 2 non-member questions. And then Jared and I are going to be doing the same thing. And it's, slightly different level of expertise, slightly different, facet of expertise, because Jared is our pro physique coach at RP. And so we're going to start that as well. Folks, paying members will get priority, but everyone else gets in too. So 2 questions for each will just be the 2 top most voted, unless the top most voted are just super dumb or super dumb or super dumb. Well, if we've covered them before and like for the 50th time. In any case, that's going to be the deal. And please consider membership. And if not, just watch along, and maybe you'll get your question answered, and maybe you'll probably learn about the same amount of stuff anyway. A lot of times members do ask pretty good questions, and sometimes very specific ones. And if you're a coach or a personal trainer, you can really probably get a lot out of this by cluing into seeing how James and I just absolutely bastardize the answers you could have given better than us. So without further ado, and, James, you ready to go?
Yeah, and just quick thanks to everybody who's joined our YouTube channel and whatever subscription tier that you've joined. Thanks so much. And we're hoping to, if you're a member, we're assuming you've probably heard a lot of our nonsense before. So feel free, if you want to ask slightly more personal or detailed question about something that's going on, happy to answer it, because I think, there's only so many times where I think Mike and I want to go through like, should I mini cut, or, we've answered that question like a bazillion times. But if you have like a specific instance or something that you want to, that you're just kind of struggling with, like, hey, I have this client I'm working with and we're doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm not really sure what to do. Those are totally fair game. So feel free to throw those in the mix.
Yeah. And, by the way, folks, we take the top 10 member questions every time, and then 2 non-member questions. So if you're a member and your question didn't get answered, apologies, but we have, I don't know how much I can talk about this. I guess it's quite fine to talk about. So we have like 500 members already, and it's climbing pretty steadily. There is no feasible way in we can answer all member questions on most weeks, because good God. But we will do our best. And as a member, you officially get priority, and a bunch of other perks as well. Like you get to see videos that come out way earlier, and you get to see some videos that won't be out for months, like my own super in-depth training and more nerd lectures. You get like 1 extra nerd lecture a month. And like, we're talking about the kind of shit that like Scott the video guy and I, look, this channel is pretty fucking nerdy to begin with. So if we take some videos out of the normal rotation plan and put them into the members area for being nerdy, that's some like, you think Yoda's your best friend in real life, you've never spoken to a girl kind of nerdy. Like you still shit your pants on occasion and grandma cleans up for you kind of nerdy. That's the kind of level we're on in the paid subscriber area. Come through, bring grandma. All right, let's get to the questions queued up. Number 1 is from Mamba Mentality.
Oh, there it is right there.
Oh,
Didn't even have to search.
All right, let's see how snakes think. After I deloaded for a week, I noticed that when I get back into my normal training sessions, that I have a pretty noticeable drop in performance on most exercises, where the cause is most likely literal muscle loss rather than neurological. And when doing a half-week deload, this does not occur. I think this is probably due to higher myostatin levels, which cause more muscle breakdown for me, as I was Also, skinny fat prior to even training, ever training. I'll say right now, we have no idea why it is. Myostatin is one of the thousands of molecules that plays in those levels. Could be anything else, but I like where you're going with this because it's definitely faster turnover rates, as we call them, or rates of evolution, as they're called in sports science, are absolutely possible. I was thinking that if this was the case, would a training frequency greater than 2x per week be more effective for me, since this will blunt myostatin levels more times per week compared to lower frequency? No, get to that in a sec. With volume rating equal, no, this might be wrong, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts. And I mean, stop being wrong, Mamba mentality.
God damn it.
Just kidding. I mean, seriously, learn things. We've got this whole learning website. I think you're absolutely on the right track. What I would say is the following, and this is a question, please answer for yourself in your own head and then proceed with the logic tree as follows. If after a half a week of deload, you don't get any strength loss, but you feel recovered and ready to go for another meso, your answer is half a week of deload is probably a really good thing to do. Guys, remember that the week of deload is a heuristic applied on 2 levels. It might not apply to you. Level 1 is the Roman calendar or whatever, which is like, why the fuck are there 7 days a week, right? Like, why couldn't there be 8? Again, quite valid. Like, if we talk to aliens and they have a 12-day week and they're like, we deload for a whole week, and be like, motherfucker, that's a whole active rest. Like, I'm sure as hell not doing that, right? And so some humans biologically need a week to recover. Some humans biologically, a week is too long, right? And you may be one of those people. And the second level at which it's applied is that it assumes the average person needs roughly a week to recover. And that's probably true, but you might not be the average person. So if you can drop your volume a little bit in the first half of the week, but still train pretty hard and pretty decent volume, and then drop your volume and intensity quite a bit in the second half of the week and make a full recovery, that's what you should do. So really, when James and I talk about deloads are a week long, the much more scientific underlying answer is deloads should be as long and as hard as it takes to drop your fatigue but maintain your fitness. And that combination of long and hard
Nice.
Thank you. I was waiting for you to recognize it. That combination of long and hard needs to be something that you can develop yourself. And if the 1 week paradigm really isn't working for you, assuming it's not your nutrition sucks or something like that, you're not sleeping on deloads. Like, well, I do tour with Motley Crue on deloads. I forgot to mention that. But as long as that doesn't occur, then I think you can absolutely adjust. You can still call the whole week a deload, but the first several days can be quite hard. And oh my God, look at the doggy in James's screen.
He's pestering me right now because Mel's not home, so he
wants attention.
Yes, I know. Go play, buddy. Go play.
I play with you now.
he's just gonna stare at me the whole time, and so I'm eventually gonna have to kick him out. Are you all done answering with?
I'm all done. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I totally agree with Dr. Mike here. Just a couple things too, Mamba. Like the idea that like you have actual muscle loss occurring during that time, I find very unlikely. And frankly, like typically what you would see is like neurological changes would come first, and that would be in the manifesting, and like your technique would just be like a little bit off as a result of deconditioning. Like that would happen before you lost any actual muscle tissue. So I find that to be very unlikely. So I would really kind of, if you're latched onto this idea of myostatin and you're losing muscle during this time, I would kind of just throw that out the window for now and just kind of look at how you're running your volume and intensities and stuff leading up into the deload and in the deload. And as Dr. Mike said, like maybe you don't need a week. Like me personally, I kind of have a little more of a type 2A, type 1 blend. So for me, my deload is usually like 4 or 5 days. And like by day 5, I'm like forcing myself to take that last day, and I'm like chomping at the bit to train again. A couple other things to think about too is that if you're getting like pretty full recovery on a half deload, that could just be, like Mike said, that just could be you, and that's perfectly fine as is. You might also consider that maybe you could be training harder, and that like maybe you're just actually not accruing that much fatigue that you don't have to, it doesn't take that long to dissipate. That's another very feasible option. So you might just be I don't want to say chronically undertraining, but maybe you could be doing more. Mike, sounds like you had something to say on that.
Oh, I said, like as in, yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I always like to cut everyone's slack and assume they're training hard. Then maybe something that is true for many people, but many people could come back and kind of have a little, come to Jesus talk with themselves and be like, well, am I really training that hard?
I think, and this is just me maybe being skeptical over time, but we kind of had different iterations of this question over the years. And my position on like, if you take a reasonable amount of rest, which like a week deload is a very reasonable amount of rest. It's not too little or too much in most cases. And you find that your performance goes down, the answer more often than not is that you just weren't training enough to warrant that deload in the first place. So like it was basically like you were doing MEV training and then you started deloading and now you're kind of deconditioning at that point, right? So I would actually, and maybe that's not true. Maybe your volume landmarks and your training is really well dialed in, so you can ignore that point. If not, I would revise some of the things that you're doing and see, like, could you actually be doing a bit more?
Either way, you get to do more. All right, next up is Bogdan Vasiliou.
Got it. I've known another man named Bogdan before.
Yeah, it's a very, very Eastern European name. They're Bogdans from nowhere else. All right, and it's very likely from like Romania or Bulgaria, more specifically.
Creepy avatar too.
Yeah, these avatars, folks, get new avatars. All right. Bogdan says, hey guys, with such limited free time, when do you decide something is worth investing time to learn, or when a book is worth taking the time to read? Regarding the former question, what are your go-to methods for studying something new? Thanks for the content you provide. I feel like I always leave a video a little wiser and a lot more witty. Oh, thanks so much, Bogdan. Probably also more perverse and less with good traditional morality. So with such limited free time, how do you decide something new is worth investing time to learn? So I actually have I have probably 3 different levels at which I invest myself, or different tiers. Tier 1 is career and work related, and that's very easy because I just know my field very well and know what I have to be doing as my job and what skills I have to be improving. So that's easy. The second one is a combination of something very enjoyable for me, but I like to learn about science, tech, and data, and all this other stuff as it evolves to give us this like crazy, super fast, singularity bound future that we're running into. So I like to stay, with this stuff, I have a lot of literature to lean on of like, for example, who do I read to learn about predictions about future tech who is reliable? I already know most of those people, and that's pretty easy to read off of them and see what I want to like. So for example, if someone's like, hey, what's fitness going to be like in 5 years? Like I have a pretty decent idea of what's VR going to be like in 5 years? What's genomics going to be like in 5 or 10 years? Like I have all the seeds for those things that I read in there. So it's not terribly difficult for me to learn. I will say, if I start reading on a seed from that, and like I've allotted myself an hour, and whatever article I'm reading or whatever like PowerPoint I'm looking at, YouTube or podcast, if it's like within the first several minutes, clearly just not going to yield any fruit, and I've seen the discussion of what they're going to talk about, and they're approaching the issue wrong from a methodological perspective, or it's a lot of ho-hum about nothing, I'll just cut. I have like James probably have one of these too. Well, I'll just cut the cord real quick. I'm like, fine, I'm out of here. I have like 4 or 5 podcasts I can always listen to, and if one of them blows dick, I'm just fucking cut and run. Unless I think it's going to be good for me to learn, even though I don't like the subject, then I stay. But a lot of times it's just like, oh, this is pure nonsense. Like for example, one of the things I do is I read Marginal Revolution blog. I highly recommend it to everyone. It's super, it's intellectual, it's economics blog, but it tells you about a lot of great news stuff and tech stuff, and just, what's the future going to look like kind of stuff. And sometimes like Tyler Cohen, I'm a huge fan of, he's a great economist. He's a guy that reads like, I don't know, like he reads like maybe 20 or more books per week for real reads. The guy's like straight up off the charts.
Nutty.
The thing is, he's into a lot of shit that like, all due respect, I love the guy. So, I'd love to shake his hand one day, but like he's into some mega nerd shit that I just step right the fuck off before that. Now, mind you, I'm into way more other mega nerd shit, just different. Like James and I are into anime, which is like as nerdy as you can get. Like clearly we have nobody in life that loves us, or we masturbate a lot, etc. But on the other hand, like Tyler Cohen would be like, here's 5 books I read about like the medieval transition period from Old English to New English. I could cut my dick off before learning that shit. I don't want to learn it. I don't care to learn it. It's not going to enhance anything for me. So a lot of that stuff, I'm just like, fuck that. And I focus on what I really need / like. And then my last tier is just pure entertainment. And then like, I really just take a real laissez-faire approach of like, so for example, I was high one of these past days, a few months back, and I was on Netflix, and I was like, I'll watch it was like Tokyo Vampire Hotel. which like if you're not high, do not watch because it makes no sense. And if you're high, it's amazing because it makes no sense. Japanese shit is going on left and right. No plot at all. It's also one of these things where the plot is like non-linear, James. Like it's not a time linear plot. Like some scene happens. Like this scene happened a while back. They don't ever tell you. Bro, but when you're high, that shit is indiscernible. You're like, I have no idea what's up and down, which is how I prefer it. And then there, you know, like I know what I like. Like if Crystal and my wife and I, if we like a movie we want to watch, we put it on the queue and then we like just watch it next time we're free. I don't like for limited free time. If it's relaxation, I try not to worry too much about am I really relaxing the right way? Because I think that worrying about it completely obviates the relaxation. Like, all right, we got to start relaxing. Get your relaxing face on.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So if I'm relaxing and I'm meant to watch a movie, like Crystal and I love watching 80s movies, but some of them are so bad. We just never make it through. Like we watched this one movie called like Johnny Be Good. We got through like 2 minutes of it and we look at each other. We do this look at my wife and I look at each other. We're like, that's out. It was gone instantly. We'll never watch it again. James, what do you think?
Yeah, those are all really good examples. So like Mike shares this burden too, but I have ADD. So sometimes the way that like things grip me is a little bit different than most people. So for me, it's usually something where it's more of a compulsion where I maybe get a whiff of something and then I'm very drawn to it. And I usually have to do some type of cost benefit analysis, like Mike said, where it's like, is this just me being ADD James? And I'm like, oh, now I'm really into the show, or I'm like really into this weed whacker. Oh my God, what do I need to know about this weed whacker? This is like ADD life where it's not really within your control. Just something snags you and you kind of have to look at it. And this is going to sound a little hippy dippy, but that's where like things like mindfulness training can be really handy, where you can just recognize that like you're having a compulsion at the moment and you can kind of just let it pass and you know that it's going to pass and just not to act on it necessarily. And that's something that's really helpful. I'm actually going through this right now, this exact process that you're talking about, Bogdan, because I was listening to an episode of Lex Friedman. Oh, I think it's actually right there on the screen. And Andrew Huberman was on. And granted, like I like Andrew Huberman, but a lot of the stuff he says, I think he kind of jumps into things a little faster than what we would normally do at RP. Like he'll latch on to
like an hypothesis generator.
Yeah, and so he's great for just like thought experiment type stuff where he'll just kind of spit out some like life hacks or whatever. And he was talking about kind of a thing that he phrased he coined the phrase non-sleep deep rest. And that like really just I had this like epiphany of like I've done so many things and this phrase hits it right on the head. Non-sleep deep
really
rest.
Does.
And I was like, oh my God, he nailed this one. So I listened to it and then it kind of spurred me into looking into this idea of non-sleep deep rest methods. And I went on to kind of another branch of research looking up kind of where he got the term. And turns out it was based in things like yoga nidra and mindfulness practice. And mindfulness is something that I've already been kind of into. So I started looking into this yoga nidra stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this is exactly the type of things that the recovery book was trying to illustrate. And I wish I could have coined that term and thought of other good examples under that umbrella and stuff like that. So that's something to me where it's like, I was listening to a podcast or I was listening to an audiobook or something, and I got a whiff of something that I thought, oh, that's actually worth investigating a little bit more. And then the wheels start turning a little bit more in the head. It's like, okay, well, if I look into this, could I do something for the YouTube channel? Could I do like an NSDR type like meditation for the YouTube channel? Or could I do, something along those lines? Now, that's where your ADD has to be reined in, where you go like, okay, my mind's going in like 1,000 different directions. I got to rein it in into something that is potentially useful and actionable. But that's kind of the process, right? Where I like to listen to a lot of podcasts. I like to do audiobooks, and that helps my ADD brain throughout the day where I can just listen. And that's where like Joe Rogan is really kind of helpful. I'm not saying that Joe Rogan's the best podcaster out there, but he has like 20 hours of content per week. And a lot of the guests are interesting. And you kind of just get that like little taste of something where you're like, oh, that seems kind of cool. Maybe I should look into that. And you look into it and you go, oh, that guy's full of shit, or there's not enough there, or maybe there's something cool. That's what happened with me this week in the Andrew Huberman stuff. So that's been my little pet project, is looking at kind of like how to include some of the thoughts of NSDR into some of the work that we've already done at RP.
They actually answered. All right, let us turn our eye of Sauron-esque attention, James. Sorry, you were drinking that. You almost spilled your drink.
I loved the nerd and level of sarcasm there.
Dude, if we ever get in our lifetimes like full immersion completely, like you can't tell VR with any experience you want, like powered by AI, I 100% am going to the Lord of the Rings universe on like 5 grams of mushrooms and putting that fucking ring on. Show me that eye, baby.
Dude.
Oh shit, this is intense. You get off the mushrooms, you come back. Oh shit, this is still intense. God damn.
Dude.
That eye's really on me.
Did you watch the new Dune movie?
No, I heard good things.
It was so like
I watched the first Dune movie. I want to kill myself.
The first Dune, they're rolling their eyes right now, going like, "Are you serious,
awful.
Dune?" It's so bad. But Dune is like, did you remember? Did you ever see The Watchmen when that came out?
Yes.
Did you notice how it felt like there's something cool here, but it's just too much. There's too much going on. Like I can't.
There's a lot going on, and it was pointlessly dark. But yes.
Yeah, so Dune is kind of like that, where there's just so much content there, it's hard to cram into like a movie.
Yeah.
The new Dune is awesome. Like the sound, the visuals. It has a bunch of like A-list actors too, which is really
Is the Schmegma worm in it?
The Schmegma worm makes several appearances. Dude,
is it credited as a cast member?
No, that'd be awesome. Played by John Cena. But dude, it's worth checking out. Like I watched it on the airplane and I was like blown away. If you were high watching that, oh my God. And it's like, it's got just enough continuity. Like the old movie, you're just like, what is happening? I have no fucking idea what's happening in this movie. This one's kind of like that, but you can at least follow along where you're like, okay, there's a plot here that I can go with. But the war scenes, like the sound,
it's intense, huh?
It's really intense. It's kind of, weird, but definitely worth watching.
Do you remember in the old movie, like the one bad guy had like a slave person that had like a carotid plug. And at one point you just like pulled the guy's plug and the guy just died. And it was like this weird sexual thing. And I was like, that guy ostensibly did a job for you, right? Now what? Like at the very least, if he means nothing to you, you have an infinite supply of these folks. They're all well trained. What are you doing? Don't destroy capital equipment like that. It's insane.
Yeah, totally wasteful.
In any case, Evan Lutz has a question. It's actually not. It's a longer question, but the answer I think is quite straightforward. Love the exclusive content format, especially since you've helped me so much in my fitness journey up to this point. I'm happy to support the channel and help you get your 10th Lambo. It's 19th Lambo, actually. I'm well ahead of the pace. Thank you. Since 9 is only for presents, and really, and so is 18 Lambos. But, who's counting?
I was like, am I missing something? Lambo? And then I was like, oh, he means Lamborghini.
You know of my Lamborghini collection, James. Yes.
But I was like, is Lambo like a slang for something that I'm not catching?
Right. Oi, you've got a fucking big Lambo, don't you? Oh, stop it, fuck off. Yeah, that's a little
Lamborghini makes
interaction.
Tractors. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's nonsense. Nonsense. The entire brand is nonsense. All right. I lost a total of 110 pounds and dropped from 285 to 175, 6 foot tall male, 28 years old, and single digit body fat with the last 30 pounds happening over about 10 weeks. Not great.
Oh, damn.
Okay? Not great was his notation, not mine. Felt like shit and had no sex drive, maintaining sub 185 and started bulking. Now I'm sitting at around 200 and dieting is so hard, even at this higher level of body fat, which I estimate to be mid to high teens. I want to keep bulking and putting on size. Should I cut back down to somewhere around 190 and bulk to 210 or do a shorter bulk to 210 now? Thanks for all you do. So is he
saying dieting is like he's having a hard time?
I don't know. That's a good question. I actually just don't know. I would say since you went all the way down to 185 and you were fucked in the ass, going to 210 now, slowly add half a pound a week for the next however many weeks it takes you to get to 210. You're 200 now. Like I'm talking about, you might have 20 weeks of massing. That long term of massing, even slowly, heals your fucking psychology up like nothing else does. A long mass, even if it's a conservative mass, will get you over that food addiction, et cetera, in a big, big way. So I would say go to 210 now, maintain, cut back down to 200-ish or 195, you'll be ripped, et cetera, and then continue that process. That's my best effort. I'd say since saying, he said dieting is so hard, I don't know. I think
what he means is like at 200 pounds, he still feels like losing weight to get back to like 185. It should be really
hard. Yes. So I say keep going. That's why I'm saying keep going. What are you saying, James?
If I'm reading that right, so that I can kind of read this question two ways, saying like trying to cut to get any leaner is really hard right now. And then I would say, yeah, just go ahead and go right to 200 or 210. Not right, slowly get there, just increase your calories and train really hard. If it's the other way around, if you're saying like you're trying to get to 210 and eating enough is very difficult, which is maybe another way of reading that. I would say you could actually just kind of cruise at like maintaining maintenance levels and just maybe a slight caloric surplus and just kind of see where that goes for a little while. And if you feel better, keep going. And if you're still feeling shitty, then just maintain for a bit until you feel less shitty.
Yeah. Yeah, but I would, So, but depending on which one you're in, that you have both correct answers there, Evan. All right. Joey Mott is up next, and he's actually just below Evan. And he says, lads, I have a question about, he's from the United Kingdom.
UK.
I have a question about fitting together my diet phases with my mesocycles. I'm currently in a 6-week maintenance with 4 weeks left, after which I'll be cutting for 8 to 10 weeks. This week I'm on deload, followed by 6-week training meso. Would you guys recommend that I continue that meso after the end of the 4-week maintenance? No. Or adapt my volume/training to my diet phase. So I would say absolutely, if you have 4 weeks left of maintenance, you need to do a 3-1 paradigm, or even a 2-to-1 paradigm, and then take the last week as active rest. I don't know if you need that, but if you don't, 3-to-1 paradigm, low volume, 4 weeks total. And then when you start your 8 to 10 weeks, you start the first of your 2 mesos of that 8 to 10 week diet with normal fat loss, whole body training, MEV to MRV volume, etc. James?
Yeah. So just like a good kind of default rule. And again, this is not a hard rule, but a soft rule, just as like kind of a guidepost, is that you should always kind of have continuity with your diet and training phases. It's very difficult to kind of, especially for the training stuff, to keep track of what you're doing when the diet fluctuates wildly. And so going from like cut to maintenance or vice versa, that's a humongous delta in the circumstances and the conditions in which you're training in, and will have massive, and most of you have probably experienced this before. Like if you've been cutting for a long time and then you have a couple cheat meals or you switch to maintenance midway through, all of a sudden you're getting outlandish pumps, you're sore all the time, How do you keep track of that? Well, it's just different. It's so different that you should treat them as separate phases. And so I find that trying to kind of have asynchronous diet and training just ends up being more hassle. If you're somebody like me and you've done this more than a few times, you can do it and it's not a huge deal. But for most people, I would say try to keep them as synced up. There's no real incentive not to either. Like, so what do you gain from keeping them synchronous? Not much.
I think some people like get really set, James, on training continuity, and they're like, I can keep going and I'm hitting these PRs and I've got this momentum. But it's like, look, like diet is such an important part of your training that you really want them to align to get the overall. And sometimes that means some training phases are cut a little short, and that's okay.
Yeah, it makes your life a lot easier, especially from the tracking perspective of just keeping them in sync. Because then you don't have any questions of like, oh, did I cut my 5-week mesocycle like a little too short? Maybe I could have done 6 weeks. No, it's just because you started eating more, or what.
I have a stupid analogy for like really quick for like racing. This is completely going to be super wrong, but just like this is a video game understanding of racing that I have. Like if you have a car that like maxes out at 220 miles an hour, and then like ideally prefer to hit the NOS after to get it to 240. Like if you're coming up and there's the finish line is just 100 meters away, but you're only at 200 miles an hour, not at 220 yet, you might like, it might be in your best interest to hit the NOS right away anyway. You're like, yeah, but I don't like to hit the NOS until I'm at top speed. Like, yeah, but the race is almost done. Like if there's a time to hit the NOS, it's now, right? And I know you would ideally hit it later, but remember the overarching purpose of racing is to win the race. So hit the fucking NOS now. I know you're just at 200. So even if you're just at week 4 of a meso, but you have to transition to a diet, it's time for that meso to end, because it's more important to have concordance than some like arbitrary level of length and finality to your mesos. I have to hit 6 weeks. Like, no, you don't. There's no sports science that says that. So.
Yeah, and you can always adjust your diets. One last point on this is like if you're setting your training schedule up so that you can do vacation or your wedding or you got some event that you're working around, and that's the reason for the strict timeline, you can always adjust the length and intensity of your diets as well. So if you have to cut it a little shorter, you can go a little harder, and vice versa. So you can always keep them together.
Harder.
More dicks.
Yeah, fellas.
Yeah, bro.
Every now and again, I say something remotely sexual can be derived from one of my Instagram videos. Is no shortage of people that come in and they're like, Dr. Mike, One time I was wearing like pretty loose fitting shorts, and like I hiked him up, and there was no like actual dick, but like at the bottom of my like lever squat, you could clearly see the outline of my cock through my
penis
shorts.
outline.
Like,
yes,
penis outline, but it's just outline. It's not like translucent. And like one guy was like, "Whoa, I can see your dick, man." I was like, "Look, motherfucker! Like if you're just like funny making a joke, I love it. Like, all right." But if you think this is like this thing, like, oh my God, a dick, like, bro, really? Like, what? First of all, what grade are you in? Like,
also, he was watching that video, like just waiting for that fucking dick imprint to show up. Like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is.
And the thing is like,
Dick, Dr. Mike.
Yeah,
dick.
yeah.
Oh.
And the thing is like, I know, motherfucker, I know you're straight because all the gay boys on my page are like, oh my God, I love you. I'm like, I love you back. Like, they don't just say like, and also they'd be like, hey, nice dick. They wouldn't be like, I see your cock. Like, you're straight and weird about it.
Yeah. It's like you were just waiting for that dick and just waiting to be offended. Motherfucker, get out.
Or something. You waiting to sniff it out. Ooh, yummy. All
Smell
right.
yo dick.
Yes. All right. Tom North is up next. You might have to search for him.
What the fuck?
It's Peter North's long lost brother.
Tom.
Just Tom, maybe?
Oh, Tom.
That's not gonna work.
There it is.
Ah.
That nice RP stamp.
Yeah. Hey, docs, when adding frequency each meso based on your own recovery feedback from previous mesos, how do you go about adjusting exercises so that not one day has more than the recommended 7 exercises? For instance, I feel like I can hit the same muscle the day after training them, but my sessions are looking really long if I do that. Therefore, if I just stick with 2x frequency for each meso, is it perhaps that I'm not training hard enough in the previous sessions? It would be great to get your feedback on this. So Tom, actually, very good answer. There's actually only one very specifically correct answer to this. If you notice that your systemic MRV is really high, such that you are like totally able to train, but it's getting to a point where you're like doing 3.5-hour workouts with 19 exercises each time, but you're totally able to recover, we have 2 suggestions for you. The advanced suggestion, which you probably shouldn't take, but Jared and Charlie and I do, is 2-a-days. Like we'll have days where we have weeks where we train 8 times a week, 9 times a week. And some like Monday, Wednesday, Friday are 2-a-day workouts where you do like biceps and shoulders and calves at the end of every, PM session or whatever is when you do them. And AM sessions, you do chest and triceps or some shit like that. That can let you squeeze in more volume without getting you into that more than 7 exercises problem with like the custom training templates because they're limited to 7. Because James and I fully believe when we build these templates, like if you can do more than 7 exercises in a row hard with 5 to 10 sets each, like get out. No, you can't. Get out of here. That's the James skeptical squint. Like, shut up. You're not training. So in any case, if you really can keep going and cranking after that, what I would say is if you don't want to train eight times a week, I would say still train 6 times a week or whatever you're doing, but have priority phases. So like some muscle groups you choose as the last exercise and you just put a little bit of work into them. And then, the other muscle groups you push first and you train the fuck out of them. And so that way you can train a whole bunch of days and can train a bunch of the exercises. But, you're not always training your whole body hard. So you might have a situation where you train your chest and back and legs super fucking hard, shoulders, arms, and calves are sort of back burner for a meso or 2 or 3. And then you flip the script and do it the other way around. That way you don't have to do infinity exercise and train everything, and you can still fill it on them. Because your question applies to high frequency training, but not just to high frequency. Like some people can do moderate frequency, but just crush the volume. And then they're like, how do I not do more than 7 exercises at a time? Those are the 2 ways to do it. 1, you either prioritize, or 2, you do 2-a-days. At the end of the day, if you have a lot of training your body can survive, that's how you thread that in, James.
Yeah, I have another thought, Mike. I'm just going to ping it off. You see what you think. So sometimes I think when people start thinking about like this kind of frequency issue and they're like, oh, I need to add more frequency, I think sometimes they also fail to scale up their MEVs across mesocycles. So they might be like, okay, I'm going to do 2 sets. Meso 1 is my first MEV and then kind of go from there. And then by meso 2, they're like, okay, now I'm up to like 3 sets when maybe you should actually be up to like 4 or 5 sets. And you're like, oh, I could add another exercise. It's like, well, maybe you actually are kind of under training quite a bit by the time you reach meso 2 or 3 by just not scaling up your MEVs on the things you're already doing. I think that is an issue that I have done myself. That's why I'm suspicious of it, because I've done this. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me just play around with MEV a little bit these upcoming mesos. And it's like, no, I should have been starting at like 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 sets per muscle group instead of like the 3 that is more traditional. instead of trying to add more exercises per week. That's something I have experienced myself. So I'm wondering what you think about that.
Yeah, that's absolutely a consideration I would look at.
Another thing too, if you're finding that you're kind of spilling over this kind of, again, this is a soft recommendation on the 7 exercises. Like if you're on more on the slow twitch, fast recovery spectrum, like maybe that's just how it is. But consider the SFR of the movements that you're doing. Because if you're doing 5 to 10 sets per muscle group, per muscle group.
The raw stimulus magnitude in this case, right? Like you're just not doing enough fucking damage or something.
You're just picking shitty exercises. Like, I mean, we still stand by that 7 exercises.
So
like
close to failure. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, look at the things that you're doing. And if you're just kind of going through the motions, like if you're just hitting if you're hitting like 5 sets of barbell curls and you're just kind of meh on it, right? Like maybe that's not a great exercise, or maybe you could modify your technique in such a way that really fucks you up so that you were like, no more, please, I'm good. That's usually another issue of people kind of just doing movement training and not muscle training. And that's where estimating that SFR can be really helpful.
All right, next up is Ibrahim Tastekin, which,
nice.
Or it's Tastekin, and he's just fucking with us.
Tastekin.
All right, Tastekin. That sounds like a southern treat. Hey, you want your own can in your mouth? What? Well, no, it's candy. You're like, oh,
tastes like your kids.
Yeah, I was going to start a discussion about adult films that replicate that sort of behavior, but I'm just going to not.
That's a rabbit hole we don't need to go down.
Well, funny enough, Ibrahim's getting us into a rabbit hole anyway. Hey guys, I've got a big question. It came up while I was pondering some of the gripping depths of bodybuilding, physique, sport, and PEDs. Feel free to push into the subject as deep as possible. I do think a lot of guys might benefit from a meaty response to it. How sizable of a stimulus can certain special supplements introduce if we were trying to target the lengthening portion of our phallus? Or more aptly put, will the TRT make my PP go wee? So that's actually by no means clear to me what this question is asking. I think he's asking if there are any special sports supplements to make your dick bigger. Right? Because generally speaking, when your PP goes wee, that means it's urinating, not getting larger.
I think like there are some supplements that can help increase like vasodilation, boner size, but like it's not going to help your flaccid dick length, but it might make you like fuller and harder when you're erect. But I don't think there's anything that makes you longer just by default.
Listen, I got the answer. But the following is a joke. Okay. Tren, weed, and Viagra all at the same time.
Jesus Christ.
You will be knocking things over with a boner that cannot be satisfied with the immortal.
That cannot be satisfied. That's the worst part.
You will be having psychotic thoughts, and you will not want to be anywhere, especially inside your own body. Slight side effect of tren and weed combined. Ibrahim, look, man, you know what I'm saying? Go see your surgeon and tell him, the God did part of the work. You're going to have to do the rest. And he'll get you a nice extension. I don't think there's any pills to make your dick bigger. And like, there's no pills to make your nose bigger. You know what I mean? It's like, no, we don't have bigger pills. That's muscle, yes, but your penis is not full of muscle. If you trained harder, it could have muscle in it. You jack off so much that your dick grows muscle, and you're like, oh my God. Yeah. Anyway. I think there are definitely like special sports supplements and even over-the-counter supplements that if you are wanting like a bigger, fuller boner, then you guys can. Notice how James said this. He goes, I think there are allegedly. I know there are. How many gas stations you bought that fucking. I've got all of them. I've gotten all of them. There's just plenty of shit like that. Like how much of an effect is there? It's not, you're not going to go from, we'll leave it at that. But we'll leave it at that. Yes. All right. So that's a good answer. You got what you got, my friends. You got what you got. That answer. Next time, we could dig into it more. Just kidding. All right. Next, number 7 is, James, just type this into the search because this is not a word. Okay. This person's username is not a word. You ready? Ready. STFNYT. It's like I just got my vision done. I'm going to get new glasses. That's the kind of shit you read on the thing, like the fucking vision wall. Is it internet speak for like stiff nut or like, STFU is like old school. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. New York City, New York Times, New York Transit. he hates the MTA. All right.
I got nothing. I don't know.
All right. Oh, here we go. He's got something.
He's got something.
Hi, docs. First of all, I'd like to thank both of you for all the great content you provide us with. Well, thank you so much. It's our pleasure. I understand quite the extreme transformation within the past 2 years. Oh, sorry. I understand. I was like, that's nice that you understand transformation. I underwent quite the extreme transformation within the past 2 years and lost a whole bunch of weight, close to 30% of my original body weight. We got a couple of you fucking bangers in here today. Amazing work, gentlemen. The only thing I'm doing 30% of is eating 30% more chocolate cake.
Damn.
I'm massing. It's terrible. I can't eat anymore and I hate myself. Like it's difficult for me to Crystal walked in on me yesterday. She got back from jiu-jitsu and I had put the last bit of rice and chicken in my mouth and she's like, how are you? I'm like, blah, blah. It was really tough. 30% of my original body weight in the matter of 8 months. Unfortunately, I've discovered RP way too late and did not just only skip the needed dedicated maintenance of 12 months. I've also been on a roller coaster of running too many cuts. I know. Woo. And then slowly having my weight creep up again. Yes. Now I am stranded with a problematic relationship towards tracking and food in general and absolutely devastating hunger. I know that I cannot keep the cycle of dropping and regaining the same weight in the long run. For now, it's blessing me with good gains in the gym, but I understand this is not only going to work out for me in the long run. How would I best strategize getting back to baseline of low diet fatigue towards lowered hunger levels? Thanks in advance for answering. You guys rock. So I would have a lot of different answers for you, but I think I have a pretty good one.
This motherfucker knows the answer. He already said it.
Yeah. So I would say just like, set yourself a 12-week massing window and aim to gain half a pound each week on average. So 6 weeks over, remember 12 weeks, you gain 6 pounds. And 6 pounds of weight just is not that much weight. Like it's just not. But that 12 weeks of being technically hypercaloric the whole time can heal your psychology up. Like James and I, and all of us at RP say maintenance phase is designed to heal your psyche. It really is, right? But it's actually the second best diet phase to heal your dieting psychology. Massing is the best. The problem with massing is like, if you get females down to 140 pounds and they're like, what do I do to heal up? We're like, mass back up. That doesn't work, right? Some people want long-term weight loss to happen relatively quickly. And then thus for them, you don't want to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. For you, absolutely
especially
the best
for like people who have gone through a big transformation like this too.
Yes.
The thought of doing hypercaloric is like outlandish. It's like,
it's crazy.
What are you talking about?
You're
I'm not
going to gain 6
weight.
pounds total, right? And you're going to almost completely, if not completely, eliminate all of your diet fatigue and be ready to maintain, cool off, reduce your training, then get back in and do a fat loss phase. And then now you're just going to pair masses and fat losses and going to stay pretty lean all the time and slowly get jacked over time. That's my absolutely best advice.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Mike here. I would come at it 2 angles. The first one, Dr. Mike already said, which is like a nice slow mass phase is going to heal those woes and you won't really gain that much weight. So a definite win-win. I understand. Now, I don't advocate for this, but I've been coaching long enough to know that people in your situation tend to be fat phobic, understandably, right? Now, I'm trying to say like you don't necessarily want to approach any kind of diet and training phase with fat phobia as like the starting point. That's not a good place to start at all. But if you're already there, right, like you have to deal with it the best you can. And in that case, you could consider just doing like a very long extended maintenance phase in which whatever you're doing now, just eat a little bit more and then just cruise on that for a while until some of those bad thoughts start to go away. And the problem there is you just have to be disciplined and not try and jump the gun with more mini cuts or more cuts or anything else. You just kind of have to cruise for an extended period of time. And the good news is a lot of those evil thoughts will start to go away. But you'll have to kind of work through some of the negative thoughts that you're going through at the same time, which is not easy. So that being said, that's another option. I don't necessarily kind of want to start somebody on a mesocycle with the idea of like, let's deal with this fat phobia. And that's where I think Dr. Mike's suggestion is probably better because it'll just kind of expedite some of those negative feelings physically and psychologically a little bit faster. But there are people out there, and typically it's people who have lost shitloads of weight and they're just not receptive to the idea of weight gain. And in that case, you just have to take a very long maintenance phase until all the evil goes away.
Yeah, ideally, if you can nut up and do a slow mass, that'd be great. And it's technically the best answer. But if you can't see any more weight on your body, because for whatever reason, just maintain is fine. But again, it's going to be a little tougher because it's going to take longer for your diet fatigue to go away on maintenance than it will on A couple of weeks of surplus, and you're like, what the fuck was I even asking about diet fatigue? James, look at the top right-hand corner, Mark Bell's Power Project. Is that the most Italian name you've ever seen?
Oh, hold on. The thing's blocking it. Sal Di Stefano.
Hey, Sal. You fucking fuck.
That sounds like
biceps. That's what he's thinking.
That sounds like somebody from Long Island.
100% as well. There's a 100% chance he's from New Jersey.
Or is it Sal Di Stefano? Would you say Di Stefano or Di Stefano?
So originally in Italian, it's probably Di Stefano, but he's almost certainly from New Jersey. So it's, hey, Sal Di Stefano. Hey.
Okay, yeah.
Gabagoo. Fucking fucks. You know, he's probably going to like meet us in real life at some point and beat us to death. But look, Sal, all jokes, my friend. All right. Caleb Avery is up next.
Got it.
He says, hey guys, I've been looking into electrolytes and wondering what kind of recommendation you would give someone hypertrophy training who also works outside and sweats a lot. It seems to be hydrated. I seem to be hydrated enough with clear urine and the backhand skin pinching testing. Yeah, you got to be real dehydrated to fail that one. But nice to know about that. That's pre-contest kind of shit. Which with electrolytes, with the electrolytes, I think that's what was meant. Are there recommendations for things like this you could give? I'm probably drinking enough water, around 100 ounces a day at 180 pounds. I want to see if you guys have any more specific water electrolyte guidance. Thank you for the videos. Definitely helps. So my best recommendation is just go get like electrolyte squirty drinks, put them in your water. So like Gatorade and Powerade, I'll make electrolyte drinks that are calories or calorie, like the little Mio squirts, except they're made by Gatorade or Powerade. Sometimes Mio has the electrolyte ones. Just squirt them shits in there. Make sure you get the ones without caffeine. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a lot of yelling at yourself in the mirror. So I would just say get those. And if you want to enhance those, a lot of times they don't have a sufficient amount of sodium. So it's like a little pinch of salt in your bottle of water along with some little squirt. And then all of a sudden the electrolyte squirt plus the salt, it makes it taste a little bit like salty and sweet, which is quite nice. It fills you up a lot. And then you get to retain a lot more water. That's my best bet. Is absolutely, James and I could give you technical breakdowns, but like that would be stupid and a huge pain in the ass for you to get almost no marginal increase on your return.
Yeah, typically like the food that you eat covers most of like your electrolyte requirements in most situations. Now, in this case, if you're taking in a lot of extra water because you're sweating a lot, then maybe it might be beneficial to do like what Mike said, maybe consider using like an electrolyte supplement. There are recommendations that we give. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but in the RP, like there's an endurance dieting mini book that we sell, and that has a lot of those like more specific nitty-gritty things. But for the most part, if you're not getting like cramping and you're sweating normally, I'm not saying like you're not observing any unusual changes in your sweating patterns, like it would be unusual for you to be not sweating at all. That would be something that would be kind of alarming. If you're not getting anything like that, like you're sweating normally, you're not getting any cramps, you probably don't need to do anything extra unless this is like a temporary thing where you're just like sweating your balls off for a couple of weeks and it's unusual. Your body will actually kind of acclimatize to whatever it is that you're doing if it's something that comes up somewhat regularly. So typically your eating habits will change subconsciously. Just you'll be more attracted to like salty food, stuff like that, or you might season your food a little bit more than normal. So a lot of that stuff kind of works itself out. You don't have to make a lot of huge adjustments unless you're having actual problems like cramping.
Boom. Next up is Noah. Just Noah.
The Noah.
Person formerly named Noah. Hey, docs, I'm wondering about the experience of delayed pain after a set. I get this in my quads, hams, and buys when I really hit the muscle hard. The pain is severe and debilitating and kind of creeps up on me 60 to 90 seconds after the set ends. I've seen you take people. I thought he said, I've seen you people take. I was like, you people.
You people.
I've seen you take people to this level of pain. Your workout videos, lying on the ground, groaning if they can't stop hurting. Yet I've never seen either of you or Jared in that kind of post-set pain. Vomiting, yes, but not this. Interesting. Are you just cutting those scenes? No, but to be completely honest, there's like 100 scenes of us doing this. And I just edited a video that'll be out in a few months of Jared training with his partner, Bree. And Jared is like lying down for at least half the video on the ground. Is this level of pain desirable for hypertrophy? If yes, when at a meso should you start to feel this kind of pain throughout or only last week or sometime in the middle? Again, if this is desirable, should I be concerned that I never seem to be able to come even close to this kind of response in my chest or back? With those exercises, I may need 2 to 4 minutes to catch my breath for the next set, but I'm never incapable. It's just too much pain for a buildup. So my best hypothesis on why this pain occurs is 60, 90 seconds works right into the hypothesis of the following. So you produce lots of metabolites, one of them most prominent ones being lactic acid in the muscles, right? When you actually train. So muscle-like quads has the muscle itself, and then it has the nerves, the nociceptive nerves, the pain nerves that are sort of all threaded around the muscle, not in the muscle, just around it. So it sometimes takes 60 to 90 seconds for all of that metabolite to be dumped out of your muscle, which it goes eventually in the bloodstream. And then it begins to fucks with the nerves. I have this experience in my hamstrings profoundly, reliably, when I do high rep or myo rep hamstring curls. I will get off the hamstring machine and literally just begin to walk around. Yeah, it's awful. I have to walk around. I continue to have to walk around so that I get enough blood and clearance so that the lactic acid and all the metabolites go away. If they sequester, I begin to hurt in my hamstrings so much. There's no position in which they don't hurt. And I have existential levels of pain where I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. One time I was training at Joey Satmary's gym, the Lion's Den, and we had finished a bunch of crazy high rep hack squats. And then we went to some leg curls. And after I got done with my leg curls, my last one, I lay down on the ground and I tried to lay on my back because that was better for the quads, but then I hurt the hams. I turned to my tummy and put pressure on the quads. The quads hurt. And I was like, I'm going to die here in pain and no one's going to remember me. It's going to be awful. Now, here's the thing. Generally speaking, the muscles that I get this in are the biggest muscles that I have, that they're more fast twitch and they grow a lot. And generally, if you're doing this, this is a great sign of disruption. Doesn't mean you need to target it. It's just a good thing. Your question of, if my chest and back don't get this, I said, okay, listen, I have speaking very humbly, my back is enormous. My chest is enormous. They never get it. My back and chest never get it. Honestly, it's only my hamstrings that get it. And sometimes my quads on rare occasions. Really just my hams. So if you have, my biceps never get it. I wish they did. If you have an incredible amount of pain, what I would say is the following. Don't target that pain. Just train like you normally train. Do good RAR proximity, hit your volume landmarks. And if some of that pain happens, walk it out, shake it out. You're great. It's at least a very good sign. If your other muscles don't have pain, the question you need to come back to with them is, am I doing everything I'm supposed to be doing? Am I following the volume landmarks? Am I training the muscles as hard as they can tolerate? Am I, scaling all of my progressions? If the case is like, yeah, everything's going well, I get good pumps, good soreness, blah, blah, but I just don't ever have that insane post 60 to 90 second post pain, I wouldn't worry about that a single time. Matter of fact, I would thank God that doesn't happen. If all muscles felt like that after training, I may consider not training ever again. It's just like a little much. Mostly that's a joke, not really. James, what do you think? Did I say anything wrong?
Just a quick asterisk on this. I know this is a very semantical thing, but when we say pain, we're not talking about like joint pain or like your bones are breaking or anything like that. It's just the discomfort from like when you're training your muscles. Upper body, almost never. The only one that I can think of is like delts. I know Mike suffers from this.
Yes, delts. Oh my God, it's awful. Yes, delts. Side delts.
Side delt. And it's because
they're asked to continue working even if your arms are on your sides. They still stabilize and like turn off.
I think that's the thing where it's like the muscles where this tends to happen is like your leg muscles and your delts. And that's just because there is sort of like a baseline level of activation that is always occurring. Like unless you lay on the ground, your legs are still having to tense just to keep you upright and moving around. Same thing with your arms. Your arms are hanging, but you're still tensing them a little bit just to keep them in place and move your arms around. So I feel like the areas where you're going to feel that pain and it's going to be really annoying is going to be the ones where you can't really shut them off. And that's usually like your quads, hamstrings, and or delts. The rest of your muscles just simply aren't large enough, or I think they can actually take a true break, like your chest and your back. Like once you unrack the bar, or the pull down handle, it's like
lower back tends to do that sometimes after rows.
Low back, that's true. That is true. But never to the point where you're like writhing on the ground. You just get that like low back pump and you're like, oh, this sucks. But you're never like, oh, my back, right? Like at least I haven't. And I think too that the people who are a little bit more fast twitch tend to suffer from this more than people who are like type 2A or slow twitch. Like if you do a set of leg press for, let's just say 15 reps at 1 or 2 from fail, and you don't writhe in pain, you never will. Like that's just not a thing for you. You know what I mean? And that's perfectly okay. Like as long as you hit your technique well, your RIR is in order, like that's fine. You don't need to be in that. Like if you're somebody who is, maybe not the just naturally most jacked person, or you don't have the biggest, most type 2X muscles on the planet, then you might not suffer from that. And that's okay. As long as everything else is in order, like Mike said earlier, you're probably doing just fine.
All right. Next up is the anabolic Italian.
Oh, another one.
Absolutely one of my favorite account names ever. The anabolic Italian has now joined the exclusive RP family. Hey, it's family. Dominic Toretto from Fast and Furious.
Family.
Toretto.
I was thinking more Olive Garden. Like when you're here, you're family.
Dude, true. I remember he did a toast in one of the movies where he was like, money comes and goes, but families forever. And I was like, gee whiz, you're really not Jewish, huh? Money comes and got you out of your mind. No, money is invested in a differentially conservative and more extreme investment instruments and yields a net return. What the fuck is wrong with you? There's only one thing money's supposed to do, moron.
I'm sad that
Comes
he
and
went.
goes.
I know that people love the Fast and Furious movies. I just don't personally. I think they suck.
I love it. You just had to say that. I hate them. Moving
but
on.
I loved Riddick, and no one else likes Riddick. I was like, why
Riddick is amazing.
Riddick is amazing. Stuff?
Chronicles of Riddick is one of the best movies of all time. And that cartoon they made between Pitch Black and Chronicles of Riddick, I've literally own it. Like I bought it on Amazon Prime, and every now and again I watch it. The music and the sound effects, like that, the crazy bitch that owns the ship, when she like walks in, they're like, I'm like, dude, who is the brilliant person to make this cartoon? It's out of this world.
Riddick is one of those, just the setting is what you love. You love everything. So
good.
About
the universe.
The universe is, it's so well built. You love it. And like the first one, Pitch Black, some people liked it, some people didn't. It's fine. But it's like, I wish they would just make more stuff. Like even if it's not Riddick, just make more stuff in that world. In that
universe. Yeah. The Necromongers, they're all super cool.
Yeah.
All right. The Anabolic Italian is now joining the exclusive RP family. Love all your free content, so why not support you guys monetarily? Well, thank you so much. Anabolic Italian is, hey, it's good to have you, one of the family. Anyway, questions for the docs. When training for hypertrophy, is it necessary? And if so, how often should you actually test your 1RM?
Never. Just throw that out the window.
All right, let's finish the question. This will be a 20-second answer. Is it sufficient enough to estimate using current working rules to failure? For instance, if 185 times 8 gets you to failure, would that transition to 1RM be sufficient enough for programming purposes? Should you actually test your 1RM? If you should test, what part of the mesocycle is the deal in order to not interfere with progression, also be as accurate as possible. Here's the deal. The way you design your mesocycles is last time you did 185 for 8, and this time you did 205 for 8. So your goal for next time is maybe to hit like 215 for 8 and program your meso like that, right? Like your meso, because it's in reps and load, and the last week is close to failure, sets of 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, actual working sets close to failure, we get exact reps. That's the best possible specific information you could possibly have. It's like take an F-15 fighter and have it go as fast as possible with no weapons loaded. Okay, full fuel tank only enough to get it to do one big run, no weapons loaded, all the governors off, go. It's okay, it goes Mach 2.5 or 2.3. And then you're like, okay, so we know the F-15 is shaped like this. Can we reverse engineer to see how fast it can go based on its engine power, its aerodynamics? Be like, bro, we just tested it. It just went as fast as it could. It's the direct test. We don't need to infer. So what you would be doing is similar in the 1RM thing is you have a direct test of your rep strength, exactly the rep range of which you need it for the next meso. And then you want to reconvert it back to 1RM, poisoning that fucking data stream, and then convert back, poisoning that stream again. There's no need to do that. It's like, it's like, how do you, it's like, what is it? I just said this joke in another RP video, but I'll repeat it again. James, the psychological school of behaviorism, where they refuse to assume anything going on inside the mind of the animal or the human. They're just like, whatever you get behavior-wise is it. The funny, this is from Steven Pinker telling this joke, because two behaviorists have sex. They finish sex and they're smoking cigarettes, and one looks over at the other and goes, "It was good for you. How was it for me?" It's like, look, like you don't need that shit. Like, your training is everything you need to know about your training. You get from every single week you do it, especially peak week, where you really put your pedal to the metal and you get your exact results of exactly how strong you are, showing you exactly how strong you need to be to meet certain goals. You don't ever need to 1RM test unless you're a power lifter. And they don't need to 1RM test in anyway. Just work up to heavy doubles, triples, and singles, and then you go to the meet, and that's your 1RM testing. James?
Yeah, so my point was going to be kind of on that, what you just finished up with there. So like you never have to do 1RM test if your goal is just kind of body composition oriented stuff. So you just want to be jacked, lean, some combination of those things. So the question that you have to ask yourself, my anabolic Italian friend, is why do the 1RM test at all? Is the outcome of your training to be stronger, or is it to be more jacked? Right? Because those are two different things. They tend to overlap a little bit, but a 1RM test is a direct measurement of your maximal strength ability. Hypertrophy training does not necessarily train maximal strength. They could potentiate it in a long-term periodized plan, but it does not train it directly per se. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you want to be stronger, maybe because you're in powerlifting or because you're doing sport training and stuff like that, you can get a really good estimate when you actually periodize your way into those heavier weights without ever having to test the 1RM. I think, like, for the most part, you don't have to test 1RMs almost ever, even working as like a D1 collegiate strength and conditioning coach. You pretty much don't have to do it. You can get what you need out of the training. I mean, it's one thing to do it as kind of like a fun, team thing where people just it's more of like I'm not even
building activity.
Team building, I don't actually advocate for this. I could at least see a justification for it. I wouldn't personally do it, but I can at least see getting everybody excited. Like, when you watch videos
Come on,
of people,
baby.
Yeah, doing like clean and jerks and with the whole football team, or they're squatting and everybody's behind them and cheering. Like there's something positive there that's worth exploring. I personally wouldn't do that. But for hypertrophy training, it's like, are the muscles that I'm training getting bigger? Am I maintaining my size as I'm getting leaner? Blah, 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 blah. Those are your outcome measurements. 1RM is not a direct outcome measurement of hypertrophy training. So just keep that in the back of your mind. It's kind of a specificity issue. Like the assessment that you're doing is not actually indicative of the progress you're making in training because it's just measuring something else. That's the problem.
You don't need to go look for another assessment. Your assessment is completely internal.
Yeah.
All right. Scroll back up all the way, James, please. These are now time for the non-member questions, just subscriber questions. And up number one is John. And John asks, what does a long-term low-volume maintenance phase look like? For example, you're maxed out natty transitioning to other hobbies. Well, so the first thing is you want to write a needs analysis. And your needs analysis needs to be based on like how many days and how much time are you willing to spare for the gym? That's probably the most important part of the needs analysis. And the other part of the needs analysis is, do you want to lose a little bit of muscle? Do you want to stay with exactly how much muscle you have? Do you want some slow gains? Once you answer those questions, you design a program to those specifications based on, like if you're a long-term person, you need to know all of your volume landmarks already. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. One of our members, actually, 4T, he says, MV to MEV training, 3 RIR to 2 RIR, 3-week mesos, deload, or not entirely up to how much fatigue you've accumulated. I think that's a fine idea. What I would say is, in order to save time in the gym, you can just do 3 to 1 to 0 RIR training. You can still train very hard. And that'll keep it nice and objective and not let you backslide or something like that. I would say the volume needs to be at maintenance volume, but you need to choose which muscle groups you include and probably use a lot of compound exercises versus isolations. I hate to see guys doing lat prayers and then bicep curls when they could have just done underhand pull-ups and just called it a fucking day. And then as far as deloads and mesos, what I would probably do is get into an probably a pure autoregulatory, almost pure autoregulatory system where your hobbies and other parts of your life determine when you deload much more than the training does. Like, so basically, like you're like, I have a camping trip in 5 weeks. Looks like that's my fucking active rest. And then train hard for 5 weeks, hard-ish, train up until you hit your 0 RIRs in week 4. And then at week 5, you go to a camping trip. That's probably how I would do it, James.
Yeah, and I agree with Mike. And I think it depends. It kind of depends on which hobbies you have, because you might consider something like CrossFit to be a hobby that you put on the back burner because you were doing a mass phase or a maintenance phase or a weight loss phase. So in that case, you might find that like doing the CrossFit stuff really wears you out. And that might look a little bit different than somebody who is getting back to hiking, or maybe like my wife right now is out bear hunting, and that's a seasonal thing, right? You don't do it all the time. Yeah, you have to train for it because you have to carry a heavy pack. You have to, go up and down mountains. You got to spend the whole day out there. So it might look kind of different depending on which hobbies that you do. Like how much allotment do you have to make for somebody who wants to golf like once or twice a week? Like probably not a ton. What I would say is, looking back at 4T's suggestion, with these maintenance phases, or these, we'll just call them low volume phases, I would say a good place to start is pick whether you want to be at MV or MEV, because kind of in that gray zone is really not great either way. So like if you want to train at
MEV doesn't really mean maintenance phase. That's the problem. It's like
right,
they're
so
by definition trying to improve some shit.
Yeah, and that might just be like you might just kind of take it as like a strength phase or something like that, where you say like, okay, I want to lift some heavier weights and I want to get a little bit stronger, and that might look more like MEV training versus a true maintenance phase to open up other hobbies would be like, okay, I'm really backing down to maybe lifting like 2 to 3 times per week, and I'm only doing a handful of compound exercises, like Dr. Mike already mentioned, not doing a lot of isolation stuff, unless you have like Dr. Mike size arms, and if you don't do some direct arm training, that you lose a little bit of size. But so it could kind of go either way depending on what your hobbies might be. For somebody who's just doing like hiking because the weather's nice and you want to get out and hike, what I might say is you could just do like a low volume strength phase kind of around MEV training, make a little bit of progress, and that would be perfectly fine. If you wanted to do something else like rugby or CrossFit, something that's just more physically demanding, that will look a little bit more like MV training, where you're really not doing a whole lot each time you train, and then auto-regulating it, as Mike said, is a really good strategy. Because at that point, like, what's going to be the limiting factor? Your MV lifting or how much CrossFit you do per week? Probably CrossFit.
James, take a look at one of the answers to John in purple with the S, saber-tooth wallaby. He goes, why would you do anything other than lift unless your hobby is gear? I got to put lifting on the, my favorite part about that is I got to put lifting on the back burner because my steroid use is so high. You're like, what? Oh, boy.
It's really taking it out of me.
Yeah. All right. Next up, and lastly.
Steroid use. I'm looking out the window right now, and there's a big Tom Turkey all fluffed up, chasing the ladies, all tested out. Like, what's up, ladies?
Look friend out of his fucking mind. Mm-hmm. The ladies are on baby VAR, though. They still want it.
They're playing hard to get.
So next person is Who Knows 464, and that's our last question for the day. He says, I've heard Mike say that a maintenance phase after a mass can be helpful for us to quote unquote solidify what may have been quote preparatory hypertrophy. Why are we not concerned with losing these preparatory gains when we simply jump from a mass into a mini cut? How do I know when these preparatory gains are at risk? So it's all just nasty speculation on our part. It's got to say these are all hypotheses. They're not theories. We have lots of stuff we base in theory. This is more hypothetical, and we're usually pretty careful to state that like we're not 100% on all this. But I will say from my experience and what theoretical research I have read on this is that really hard cuts risk your muscle in a special way that mini cuts and short cuts just don't. So if you just did a mass phase that got you to your biggest ever, and then you do a cut phase to get super lean again, you may end up not holding as much of that muscle as if you did a mini cut afterwards, then a mass mini cut, because the mini cuts don't super risk a ton, because what potentially risks new muscle mass is really going back into crazy diet mode. And some bodybuilders have noticed over the years that like if they hang out at a slightly higher body weight for a while, they tend to diet down and keep a lot more muscle than if they just get there for a little bit and then go all the way back into contest prep. Because mini cut is not risking a ton of muscle, because it's not that nasty. Like, but honestly, if you've ever done a contest prep or a real serious diet, unless you're managing this through lots of gear use, and even still, the last 4 to 6 weeks is when you see a lot disproportionate muscle loss. We like can maintain your strength and size quite well into like the 7% body fat, 6% even kind of thing, 4 or 5% body fat. Once you enter into that range, unless you're pharmacologically boosting yourself right out of any kind of muscle loss, which is risky but smart in that case, you will tend to lose a lot of muscle and strength then. At the last 4 or 5 weeks of a diet, you're like, I used to be able to leg press 5 plates for reps. Now it's just 4 plates for reps. Someone's like, it's glycogen. Yes. Someone else is like, it's fatigue. Someone else is like, it's psychological. And then, sports science is like, it's all of those combined. Yeah. Plus your body's permanently starving to death and will eat anything, including its own muscle. So yeah, I would say that mini cuts just absolutely don't present any of that problem, which is why you don't have to solidify before you do a mini cut. And the mini cut actually offers some of the solidification for you. Whereas if you just go into a deep contest prep or a super crazy diet, you may get away with less muscle gain. Again, that's hypothesis. It could be that if we did extensive testing, all that's just fluff bullshit. It's our best guess as to how things happen, given our limited understanding. What do you think, James?
Yeah, and even though mini cuts tend to be slightly more on the intense side, I think it's the duration effect there, where it's not long enough to actually accrue any serious negative effects. And even if you do accrue like a tangible amount of muscle loss or something like that, you're going right into a weight gain phase anyway. So most of those losses are immediately offset. And the time, again, it's the time scale where it's like you don't have enough time to cause a lot of acute problems to yourself, nor do you have enough time to cause like long-term shifts in like your settling points and things along those lines either. And it's pretty much completely offset by the enormous amount of time that you've spent over the last 2 blocks, presumably doing weight gain. So I think it's kind of a drop in the bucket. In terms of the preparatory hypertrophy, I'm not so sure about. And when I say I'm not sure, I don't know. I'm not sure if those interfere on what levels, if they would. So that I really can't comment on because I just don't know. It's not my wheelhouse. But I do, from a practical standpoint, I think it's mostly just the time scale of like time spent in hypercaloric versus time spent in hypocaloric, and what is the net effect over that long period of time.
Very well put, folks. We would love to continue to give you answers to questions, but the reality is that we would not love to continue this. What is it? Agent Smith to Neo The problem is that we are not free, Mr. Anderson. James, what were you going to say? You watched The Matrix again and you hated it again?
I watched the new one, the most recent one, and it starts off. I'm trying not to do any spoilers. So I know I'm the last. I'm late to the
Trinity dies.
Well, it was like it starts off strong. Like halfway, like the first half of the new one, you're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, I see. We're doing something interesting here.
Oh, no.
And then the last half really just fizzles. It really fizzles.
Sucks, bro. I wish it was the other way around. No, for reasons like this, I've been reading reviews like this or talking to my friends, and they're like, just don't watch it.
I wouldn't go as far as to say as to not watch it, but it's definitely not like, it's not the best effort. It wasn't. It's by far my least favorite. But the initial premise is interesting, and there's some cool actors in there, like Neil Patrick Harris is in there, and
what?
Yeah. It starts off good. It's like it kind of you're like, oh, okay, this is weird. I'm into it. And then like it all of a sudden it just like takes off too fast in the direction, and then just kind of fizzles.
Fuck. James, how much goth slut shit is in there?
Intermittently a lot.
Excellent. I will be watching it on mute.
Yeah. Yeah, give it a watch.
Don't say too much, James.
Give it a watch. You give it a watch just for. I think you'll enjoy the first half, and then the last half you'll be like, "Oh,
just turn it off."
Yeah. I also saw the latest Spider-Man, and that was also okay. But I loved how
said the latest Spider-Man is the greatest movie ever made.
No, he's an idiot. But it was fun to see them.
News to no one.
we are in like a cool timeline where like movies from a certain time period had X, Y, and Z actors, and then they're still alive to do the movies 20 years later. Like Star Wars was like that. The guy who played Palpatine is in like all of the fucking Star Wars movies.
So crazy.
Isn't that wild? Right. And same thing with Spider-Man. They brought back the actors from the previous gen of Spider-Man movies, and they're present in the new one. And you're like, oh, that's really cool. So cool. But other than that, it was kind of, it was fine. It was Spider-Man.
I will say that the way that they did the last 3 Star Wars movies, the chronological ones, episodes, whatever, 7, 9, 79. The way they did them, specifically specifically the second to last one and then the last one, is maybe like, you would have to fumble in the last play at the Super Bowl 1,000 times to be that embarrassed about ending something. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad. Like movie number 2. It's just Luke Skywalker having like a fit and just like quitting, and just that's it. And you're like, I'm sorry, who is this about now? And it's like, it's about Rey. And what is she? Like, she doesn't know. Last movie, like, hey, you're sort of nominally related to Palpatine, and the good guys win. Yay.
Dude, they dropped the
amazing
balls.
Sword fights. It was just awful at every fucking turn. I hated it. I couldn't.
Who was what was the guy's name? The guy who used to be in the army and then converted to the rebellion. He was helping Rey. I forgot the guy's
black
name.
Dude.
Yeah,
he was great, and they took his character nowhere.
I know, that's what really pissed me off. I was like, oh, this guy's kind of interesting because
him and Rey had like a connection that also went nowhere. I was like, is they gonna fuck or what? God damn it!
I know, they dropped the ball.
That would have been hot.
And then there was like all this backlash of people who were like, oh, why didn't you like Rey? Because you're fucking chauvinist. It's like, no, she just wasn't interesting.
What the fuck are you guys talking about? Make one movie about Ahsoka Tano, and I'll show you how much of a chauvinist I'm not. Exactly. We need an Ahsoka Tano. I think Ahsoka Tano is actually getting her own series.
Well, and there's tons of powerful female characters in the Star Wars universe. So it's like, it's not that.
Ayala Sakura. I mean, we could go on. Like, get out of here, you assholes. Like, that's just insane. Like, SJWs have lost their fucking minds. Like, your movie sucked. Go try again. Sucked. It's nothing to do with your political bullshit. It's just a fucking blue.
And who was the guy? Who was the Sith guy? I'm not as tuned into this Star Wars universe.
Oh yeah, the one guy, yeah, and then he just dies. Like he just gets cut in the fucking stomach with a lightsaber. Like gets surprised. The guy who looked really big in the video display. That guy.
Oh, not that. The guy who's Han Solo's descendant.
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren. Yeah,
he's a piece of shit. Just
his character fizzled out too. In the beginning, you're like,
he goes nowhere.
He goes nowhere, and he's like, in the beginning, you're like, oh, he's this like really edgy guy.
Yes.
Right? And you're like, let me see you do some edgy shit. It's like, it reminded me of an X-Men when Magneto was a kid and he's in the SS office and you're like, kill them now.
And then he just doesn't.
And he doesn't. And you're like, fuck.
There's no good reason either. He got pissed enough to start doing crazy shit, but he just didn't kill anybody. It's like, look, man, if I was a Jew in the Holocaust and I had the opportunity to crush people with magnet hands, you know what I'm saying? Hitler would have to take a second fiddle to me how many fucking people I killed. You out of your fucking mind?
And that's what I was like. That's why I didn't like that character, because they made him so edgy, and then like he just got soft at the end. You're just like, oh, you suck,
bro. He was like Anakin. You can understand his bitching because he eventually, you're like, okay, at least he becomes Darth Vader. That's pretty sweet. You know, movie number 2 with Anakin is just he's like a 15-year-old bitch. He needs like wrestling practice to like harden his ass up. Shut up, do more push-ups. Shut up. I don't care what you have to say. Yes. But like, you know, he just never got that, I guess. But you know, this Kylo Ren is like someone who starts off with like, all right, you're edgy, and that's okay because you're powerful, and maybe you'll do cool things with it. He just never does. And then he starts to like, they have this thing where they have this like him and Rey have this like, they can see through each other through the Force. They can like force teleport, and then they just do nothing with that. Ever. I thought that was going to fuse into like the ultimate Jedi, or they. Here's the thing. There's a lot. There's a lot of like
fusion dance,
dude. 100%. Here's the thing. Like, if you watch the Clone Wars and you get really into canon Star Wars, the Jedi's actually wrong. And so are the Sith. The Force needs to be unified so people can, you know,
the libertarian
ultimate Force master. Yeah, the ultimate Force master can recognize darkness and light and use both to his advantage. The thing is, like, I literally thought that Kylo Ren and Rey were gonna like both learn from each other or something, and one of them was going to, at least one of them, probably both, will ascend to being able to use both dark and light. Will become ultra powerful Force people and do good, or establish like a new Jedi that are based on like just use the Force and be intelligent with it. Don't just sequester the light or the darkness. And they just like, and then what happened? Nothing fucking happened. I could have written Star Wars better than these fucking. I know that sounds like armchair quarterbacking, but I'm not fucking joking. What is this? Dave Filoni. And who's that guy that runs all the fucking Star Wars shit now? Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau need to be the only people who are allowed to touch Star Wars. Everything they fucking do is goddamn gold. They're the people that wrote everything. They're the guys that designed the fucking Mandalorian. Dave Filoni is the guy that wrote most of Clone Wars. That's the kind of people you want doing your shit. They don't miss. Stop it with this bullshit where you let some fucking asshole ruin your fucking goddamn franchise. I can't even believe I'm saying that.
I think it's because the CCP got in there somewhere. They're like, let's revamp Star Wars a little bit to our liking.
The giant Communist Party. There's like a Uyghur scene that's deleted. You're like, okay.
they took all the younglings out of the third movie and replaced them with Uyghurs.
So like, oh, nothing bad happens here.
Nothing bad happens here. Okay, another one that fell short, and then we're out of here.
Please.
So Mike already knows my woes on this. I've gone back and watched all the Dragon Ball stuff as an adult to just rewatch. I've watched it all as a kid, and and then I watched it as an adult, and I was like, what the fuck? This is terrible. I started watching GT again, folks. What the fuck? It's so terrible. I'm in like 20 episodes in, and they're getting like haggled by space Jews, and like it doesn't make any sense. It makes
dude, it's awful. Here's the thing: is GT can be summarized in like a no filler episode that's 1 episode long. And also all the cool scenes are that long. Like there's like 5 cool scenes from GT. One of them is when like Goku first ascends to Super Saiyan 4 and he looks at him like at a piece of glass and it breaks from his like power. I'm like, hell yeah. Shit, there's like 5 episodes of shit like that. And then that's it. Like Omega Shenron, he's pretty cool. And that's it. The whole baby saga is like biggest waste of time anyone's ever. It was awful. Have you gotten a baby saga yet?
Yes. But right now, I've watched it in the past, but I haven't rewatched it yet. But like, what's killing me is the kid Goku. Okay, so if you watch the English version, this is some meta level shit. I'm sorry. So if you watch the kid version, they flip flop all the voice actors around. So now the guy who voiced Goku is voicing adult Trunks, and the guy who voiced Gohan is now kid Goku. So you hear the voices, and you're like, wait, it's a mind fuck because you're used to hearing their voice as like a different character. Yeah, fuck. Yeah, it's
GT. Time. It was good that GT got like, it was just like a little thing that's actually not considered canon, I guess, and then they just went back to the normal shit. Just for the best.
All right. Well, on that note, thanks so much, guys, for joining us. We appreciate you guys. Make sure if you want a better chance at your questions being answered, check out their subscription options. They're pretty cool. You get lots of different content. Thanks for those of you who have subscribed already. We appreciate it.
If you have trouble seeing the button to subscribe, it's right below each video, but it might not be on your phone. It's on desktop only. That's not our call. That's the YouTube service as offered currently. It's still in beta, by the way, this service. So, but it's cheap and it's cool, and you can get naked pictures of us if you're in the members area. Just kidding, but think about
only fans to come. So thanks again for your great questions. We appreciate you guys as always, and we will see you next time.
Peace.